In the rush of life, we often forget the ones who held our hands when we couldn't even walk. Our parents don't ask for much, just a call, a visit, a little time. But sometimes, by the time we realize their value, the chair they sat in is empty, and the phone never rings again. This is the story of Arun, a 74-year-old father who gave everything to his children, his sweat, his youth, his dreams, and when he needed just a little care, a little presence, all he got was silence. But what no one knew was that Arun carried a secret, one not of revenge, but of quiet dignity, a secret that turned rejection into refuge and pain into purpose. This is not just a story, it's a reminder. Love your parents when they can still hear it, because no matter how rich or busy we become, nothing will ever be more valuable than a parent's silent sacrifice. They say life moves fast in cities like Pune, but for some, it slows to a painful stillness. I still remember that quiet evening when I got a call from Uncle Arun's landline. Not for the first time, but somehow it felt heavier. "Anaya Beta, are you home?" His voice trembled, as if it carried more than just words. "I think I've caught a little fever, if it's not too much trouble." It had been weeks since he lost his job at the corner Kirana store. The owner said it wasn't personal, just that his hands trembled now, and the register keys confused him. At 74, Arun uncle was no longer efficient. His children, 2 sons in Bengaluru and Delhi, a daughter married in Surat. He had called each of them that morning. "I know, because he told me," his voice trailing off as he listed their excuses. "Ravi said he's busy with a client pitch. Suman's phone didn't connect, and Meena, she asked if I could WhatsApp her later." He chuckled dryly, but I saw it in his eyes. That wasn't a laugh, it was surrender. I made some khichdi and walked over with paracetamol and a warm towel. His home smelled faintly of camphor and old books, the kind of scent that reminds you of devotion and discipline. He tried to sit up, apologizing repeatedly. "I didn't mean to bother you, Betty. Just couldn't stand the silence anymore." I sat by his bed and held his hand. It felt cold. In a culture that worships parents like gods, we often forget the gods living among us. Arun uncle, who once cycled through monsoons to pay school fees, now lay alone, waiting for someone, anyone, to show up. I didn't know then that it would be one of the last times I'd see him in that house. He said something before I left that stayed with me. "It's strange, Anaya. When you have nothing to offer, that's when you learn who truly sees you." I nodded, unsure what to say. I never imagined he was hiding anything. He was just Uncle Arun, retired, tired, and invisible to those he once called his whole world. But the truth was, his story hadn't ended. It was just beginning. Weeks passed. I still brought over warm food whenever I could. Uncle Arun always greeted me with that same soft smile, the kind that hides more pain than words can express. But then, one day, he was gone. No note, no call, just an empty home with folded blankets and a small photo of his late wife placed neatly on the shelf. I panicked. I called his children. They hadn't heard from him either. "Maybe he went to live with a friend," one of them mumbled. "Maybe he's just tired of everything," said another. But none of them came. Months later, while working part-time at a health camp in Mumbai, I heard whispers about a man helping the homeless in Dharavi. They called him Baba because no one knew his name. He wore simple cotton kurta, served chapati and dal to those who had nothing, and never spoke of his past. It was only when I visited myself that my heart stopped. Behind the soup counter stood Uncle Arun, thinner, older, but standing straighter than I'd ever seen him. He looked at me, stunned. Then he smiled. "Anaya, you found me." I was too shocked to speak. He invited me to a bench outside, under a tree where the air smelled of turmeric and fresh rain. "I didn't leave because I gave up," he said. "I left because I finally had something to give." And then he told me. For over 30 years, he had paid taxes on a barren piece of land in Rajasthan. Land everyone. "For over Rs 11 crore, Uncle Arun said, almost like he was speaking of someone else's fortune. His eyes didn't sparkle with pride. They were steady, peaceful, like someone who had finally let go of a heavy burden. I asked for just one thing, he added, that my name should never appear. Not on the papers, not on the check, just silence. I sat there, stunned. The same man who used to count coins for vegetables now owned enough to live 10 lives comfortably. And yet, here he was, in a cotton kurta, serving food under a leaking tin roof. He smiled gently. I didn't want to be seen as a donor, Anaya. I wanted to be someone who sat beside, not above. Instead of buying a flat or traveling the world, he had bought a crumbling row of chawls near Tarvi and turned it into a shelter. Not just a place to sleep, but a space to breathe. We painted the walls ourselves, he said proudly, used leftovers to cook, and at night we sang old filmy songs. For once, I wasn't alone at dinner. He called it Arun's hand, but no one knew it was his hand. The foundation had no pictures, no press, no sponsors, just kindness wrapped in anonymity. When I asked why he hadn't told his children, he looked away for a moment, then said, I did call them once, not to ask for help, just to say I was okay. But they were still busy. There was no anger in his tone, just a quiet acceptance, the kind that comes when you've stopped expecting and started giving without reason. I realized something in that moment. Uncle Arun hadn't just rebuilt a building, he had rebuilt himself. And somehow, in doing so, he was rebuilding others too. 2 years had passed. Arun's hand had become something unexplainable, part home, part temple, part miracle. But while it bloomed quietly in one corner of Mumbai, life elsewhere had turned unkind for the ones who once turned their backs on him. His eldest son, Ravi, lost his corporate job during a company restructuring. For months he tried to maintain appearances, shifting from Uber cabs to shared autos, avoiding neighbors, borrowing behind his wife's back. Eventually, the facade crumbled. His wife left, taking their daughter. His rented flat was locked. Friends stopped replying. Homelessness isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it begins with a single night on someone else's floor and stretches into weeks. One rainy evening, Ravi wandered into a public library, soaked and hungry. He sat near the entrance just to stay dry. That's when he saw it, a faded flyer pinned to the board. Arun's hand, meals, shelter, dignity. No one left behind. He froze. The name punched him in the gut. Arun, it couldn't be. Could it? He read it again, hands trembling. There was an address. He knew that street. He had passed it before. Suddenly, something inside him stirred. Shame, maybe. Or hope. Or that faint echo of childhood when his father once held him close during a storm. The next morning, he walked there, step by step, through puddles and guilt. When he arrived, he saw children playing in the courtyard, a woman hanging clothes to dry, and volunteers laughing in the kitchen. And standing at the door in a faded kurta, holding a tray of chai glasses, was his father. I visited Arun's hand again a month later, but this time, it wasn't just a shelter, it felt alive. Children laughed in the courtyard, their feet dusty, their eyes bright. A young man fixed broken chairs near the entrance. A grandmother stirred dal in a giant pot, humming an old bhajan. Uncle Arun stood by the doorway, hands folded behind his back, watching it all like a gardener who had waited patiently for his seeds to bloom. This is not charity, Anaya, he said, as we sat under the neem tree. It's family, but with no blood conditions. He didn't just feed the hungry, he listened to them. He helped a widow start a chai stall. He sent a boy to school. He paid for cataract surgery for an old man who hadn't seen clearly in years. No one ever knew it was him. Every time someone asked where the money came from, the answer was always the same. A well-wisher, one of us. Volunteers came and went, but Uncle Arun remained the soul of the place. Every day, he'd rise before sunrise, sweep the steps, boil chai, and greet each person by name. No one was invisible here. And I kept visiting, drawn by something I couldn't explain. Hope, maybe. or the quiet strength that lived in that simple man with tired eyes and an unshakable heart. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the tin roofs, he told me, "Anaya, we're not here to save people, just to remind them they still matter." That night, I wrote his story down for the first time, not for the world to praise him, but for those who had ever felt forgotten. Because Arun's hand wasn't just a shelter, it was a heartbeat. He didn't run toward him. He didn't shout, "Papa!" like in the films. No, Ravi just stood there, soaked, speechless, ashamed. Uncle Arun paused. His eyes met his son's. No anger, no surprise, just a softness that made my own heart ache. Ravi stepped forward, slowly. His voice cracked like dry leaves. I didn't know where else to go." Uncle set down the tray, wiped his hands on his kurta, and walked over. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he placed a hand gently on Ravi's shoulder. "You came. That's enough." Ravi's knees buckled. He sank onto the step and cried. Not loudly, not theatrically, just a quiet, broken sob. Years of guilt spilling like monsoon rain. Later, over warm chai and silence, Ravi whispered, "Why didn't you tell us you were okay? That you had all this?" Uncle Arun smiled faintly. "Would it have changed anything?" Ravi didn't answer. He didn't need to. That night, for the first time in years, father and son ate dinner together. No bitterness, no explanations. Just the simple comfort of shared rotis and forgiveness. Over the next weeks, Ravi stayed. He helped fix leaking pipes, organized storage shelves, even played cricket with the kids. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He was no longer the man who once forgot his father. He was becoming the son Uncle Arun had always believed he could be. And Uncle, he never spoke of the past, not once. Because some people don't come back for apologies. They come back to start again. It was a quiet morning when Uncle Arun didn't wake up. No dramatic gasp, no hospital beeping. Just a peaceful stillness in the room, as if he had simply completed something. I was there that day, the same way I had been years ago, holding a bowl of khichdi and wondering if anyone would answer his call. But this time, he wasn't alone. Over 100 people came to the small prayer hall, men and women from shelters, children from the slums, volunteers, and even strangers who had once been handed a warm chapati and a smile when they had nothing else. Ravi stood at the front, holding a faded kurta in one hand and a small framed photo in the other. It wasn't a grand eulogy, just a few soft words. My father left a home once, with nothing but a name and a quiet heart, and in that silence, he built something louder than any praise. Behind him, on the wooden arch above the door of Arun's hand, we had carved his final message, one he had scribbled on the back of an old receipt and taped inside his locker. The hands that lift others never stay empty. That day, we all cried, not out of sorrow, but out of gratitude. Uncle Arun didn't leave behind wealth or fame or property. He left something bigger. He left behind a way to live without pride, to give without name, to forgive without needing sorry, and to remind even the most forgotten that they still matter.